Breaking news right off the top at 4 o'clock. Cindy Singh, the North Texas mom on the FBI's top 10 most wanted list for the murder of her 6-year-old son, captured.
If you're wondering how someone like her ended up on a list usually filled with cartel bosses and violent criminals, stick around. Because today, we're digging deep into every name on the FBI's most wanted list, and we're starting with Cindy, whose case shocked the nation and shattered a quiet Texas town. Unlike some fugitives who blend easily into a crowd, Cindy Rodriguez Singh had an intense, almost defiant presence in her wanted poster. Her photos showed a hard stare that made many people uncomfortable. It wasn't the face of someone trying to appear harmless or innocent. It was the kind of face that made you feel like she knew more than she was saying. And yet, no one could have imagined that behind that expression was a case that would pull an entire community into a nightmare. It all began in Everman, Texas, a small, quiet town where families knew each other and children played freely in the streets. Cindy lived there with her husband and their 7 children, including her 6-year-old son, Noel Rodriguez Alvarez. But in May of 2023, that seemingly normal life collapsed when Noel suddenly disappeared. At first, it was treated like any other missing child case. Flyers were posted, neighbors helped search, and everyone held out hope that the little boy would be found safe. But that hope quickly faded. As investigators questioned Cindy, her stories kept changing. She told one person that Noel was living with his father in Mexico. To another, she claimed she had given him away to a woman she barely knew. The contradictions were impossible to ignore. And when cadaver dogs were brought into the family home, they alerted to the possible presence of human remains, turning the case into something much darker than anyone had expected. Then came the disappearance that changed everything. On March 22nd, just weeks before the public even learned that Noel was missing, Cindy left the country. She boarded a flight to India with her husband and 6 of her children. Noel was not with them, and from that moment on, she vanished without a trace, slipping past authorities before they even had the chance to press charges. For the next 2 years, law enforcement searched across borders and through digital trails, but Cindy always managed to stay ahead. Officials believe she moved between safe houses, changed her appearance, and used international travel to avoid detection. Every time the FBI thought they were getting close, she disappeared again, as if she knew exactly when and where the pressure was rising. Some speculated that she remained hidden in India, protected by family members, while others believed she might have returned to the U.S. using a false identity. In July of 2025, the FBI made a bold move. They officially added Cindy Rodriguez Singh to their 10 most wanted list. It was a decision that stunned many. She became only the 53rd woman ever placed on that list, and one of the very few mothers suspected of murdering their own child to be included. Along with her name came a massive $250,000 reward, placing her among the highest priority fugitives in the country and sending a loud message that the Bureau was no longer playing games. And the strategy worked. Just weeks after her name was added, Cindy was captured. On August 21st, she was taken into custody, ending more than 2 years of evasion. Details about where and how she was found remain limited, but what's clear is that she's now back in the United States and will finally have to answer for her actions. But while her arrest brought a wave of relief, it also resurfaced the pain of the unanswered question. Where is Noel? Noel's body has never been recovered, and though Cindy has been caught, there's no real closure without knowing what truly happened to that little boy. For the people of Everman, this case left a permanent scar. The loss of a child is already unbearable, but the idea that his own mother may have been involved is something that still haunts every person who lit a candle in his memory. Cindy's capture is a step toward justice, but justice is not the same as peace. Next is the woman who's been on the run for nearly 8 years, Ruja Ignatova. Known around the globe as the Cryptoqueen, Ruja isn't just infamous because she's one of the few women to ever appear on this legendary list. She's infamous because of the scale and boldness of her crime. Her rise to notoriety began with the promise of a revolution in money itself. In 2016, she walked onto the stage of London's Wembley Arena in a floor-length blazing red gown that caught every light in the room. She told the thousands in the audience and the millions watching online that her cryptocurrency, OneCoin, would not only compete with Bitcoin, it would destroy it. In 2 years' time, she claimed, OneCoin would be the one true coin, the global currency of the future.
It is really a pleasure for me to be here 1.5 years after we launched our cryptocurrency OneCoin. I think today we spoke a lot about the network, the vision for the network, how big we want to be. But as always, I want us to remember what this network is about. This network was created to become and to fuel the growth of OneCoin, which I strongly believe will be the #1 cryptocurrency worldwide.
Between 2014 and 2016, investors around the world poured over $4 billion into the project. More than 50 million came from hopeful individuals in the United States alone. People didn't just see Ruja as an entrepreneur. They saw her as a visionary who could make them rich beyond their dreams. She promised returns 5 times, even 10 times the original investment. But there was one devastating truth Ruja never revealed. OneCoin was a complete fabrication. There was no blockchain, no functioning exchange, and no way for investors to ever cash out. It wasn't a breakthrough in cryptocurrency. It was a sophisticated Ponzi scheme dressed up in glamour and tech jargon, and Ruja played the role to perfection. By the time regulators began poking holes in her empire, it was too late. The money had been siphoned away, and in October of 2017, Ruja made her move. She boarded a flight from Bulgaria to Greece, and then she was gone. No public sightings, no confirmed leads, just silence. Later, leaked emails revealed the full extent of her manipulation. She referred to OneCoin as trash, mocked investors as idiots, and even joked with her partner Carl Greenwood about disappearing with the money and shifting the blame. Greenwood wasn't so lucky. He was caught, convicted of wire fraud and money laundering, and in 2023, sentenced to 20 years in federal prison. Ruja, however, has remained a step ahead. Fluent in 4 languages, armed with a PhD, and adept at crafting an image of elegance and intelligence, she could blend into high society anywhere in the world. Rumors swirl about her fate. Some say she underwent plastic surgery and now lives in luxury, surrounded by armed guards. Others believe she slips quietly between countries using a German passport, staying just far enough ahead of the law. And the most chilling theory was that she was murdered by former associates who feared she might expose them. Whatever the truth, one fact remains. She's still out there. And the United States Department of State is offering up to $5 million for information that leads to her arrest or conviction. 8 years later, the hunt for the Cryptoqueen continues, and so does her legend. Omar Alexander Cardenas. You'd think that this overpound guy could never run far, let alone outpace the FBI. But you might want to think again, because Omar Alexander Cardenas has been evading the law since 2019. And he's not hiding because of some petty shoplifting or a bar fight gone wrong. No. He's wanted for cold-blooded murder, carried out in broad daylight, in the middle of a Los Angeles shopping center, with cameras rolling the whole time. The kind of crime that leaves you wondering how someone this visible could vanish so completely. It was August 15th, 2019, a hot summer afternoon in Los Angeles. The kind of day when life felt almost predictable. People were getting haircuts, shopping, grabbing something to eat. The air buzzed with the hum of normalcy. Somewhere in that crowd was Omar, moving through the strip mall like he had nothing to hide. He wasn't in a rush. He wasn't nervous. Surveillance footage shows him walking casually, blending into the scene as if he were just another customer looking for a place to cool off. But just minutes later, his true purpose became chillingly clear. Another camera angle catches him again, still casual, still calm, before he turns a corner and comes face to face with 36-year-old Jesse Avalos. Without a word, without hesitation, Omar pulled out a semi-automatic handgun and fired multiple shots directly at Avalos's head, killing him instantly. This wasn't a heat-of-the-moment argument. This wasn't self-defense. This was a targeted hit, deliberate, calculated, and brazen enough to be carried out around 4 o'clock in the afternoon while businesses were open, people were walking by, and security cameras were running. After the shots, Omar didn't stick around. He turned and ran, disappearing from the camera's view, and eventually from the entire country. Authorities believe Omar is tied to the Pier Street Gang, a violent Los Angeles street crew with deep ties to organized crime. On the streets, he's known simply as Omar, which makes him harder to track. Investigators suspect he fled to Mexico within hours of the killing, possibly relying on gang connections or relatives to hide him from law enforcement. 2 years later, in September 2021, the FBI added him to their 10 most wanted fugitives list, charging him with murder and unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. They hoped the national attention and a reward of up to $250,000 would lead to his capture. But here's the frustrating part. Omar isn't a ghost. He has a distinctive look, at least the last time he was seen. The FBI describes him as around 300 pounds, wearing thick prescription glasses, with at least one visible tattoo. He's considered armed and extremely dangerous. And yet, despite those very recognizable features, no one has managed to track him down. It's entirely possible that he doesn't even look like that anymore. He could have lost a significant amount of weight, shaved his head, grown facial hair, or ditched the glasses. Maybe he's altered his appearance just enough that even people who've seen his wanted poster wouldn't connect the dots. He could be hiding in plain sight, working under a fake name, living in a small town, doing everyday things like buying groceries, getting gas, or standing in line at the post office. That's what makes this case so unsettling. The thought that the man caught on camera committing a cold-blooded execution might now be blending in perfectly among unsuspecting neighbors. For Jesse Avalos's family, every day without justice is another day the wound stays open. And for the FBI, the search continues. So if you think you've seen Omar Alexander Cardenas, even if it was years ago, even if he looked different, don't dismiss it. The FBI is offering up to $250,000 for information that leads to his arrest. One call could bring an end to years of silence and finally deliver justice for a murder that shocked Los Angeles on an ordinary summer afternoon. Ryan James' wedding. The next name on the FBI's 10 most wanted list might be the most jaw-dropping of them all, not just because of the crimes, though they're brutal enough to freeze your blood, but because of who he used to be. Meet Ryan James' wedding. Once celebrated as a national hero, a Canadian Olympic snowboarder who flew down icy slopes chasing gold, now transformed into an international fugitive accused of murder, drug trafficking, and running with one of the deadliest cartels on Earth.
A former Olympic snowboarder is on the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list, and there is a $10 million reward for any information on how to find him. Ryan Wedding is a Canadian national who competed at the 2002 Games in Salt Lake City. He is accused of trafficking drugs from Colombia through Mexico and the U.S. into Canada.
Born on September 14, 1981 in Canada, Ryan was raised in a family of athletes. Ski racing was practically in his DNA. He learned the sport at his grandparents' mountain lodge and grew into one of the country's top snowboarders. He represented Canada on the world stage, living the dream of every young athlete. But somewhere between the medals and the endorsements, cracks began to show. Those cracks split wide open in 2008 when Ryan tried to buy cocaine from an undercover U.S. federal agent. The fall was swift and public. By 2010, he was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. For most people, prison would be the rock-bottom moment, the wake-up call to change course. For Ryan, it became a stepping stone, because when he walked out of those prison gates, he didn't go straight. He went global. By October of 2024, the U.S. Department of Justice unsealed a massive indictment against him. Ryan wasn't just dealing drugs anymore. He was allegedly running a transnational criminal enterprise tied to trafficking, murder, and attempted murder. Federal prosecutors say he was the mastermind behind Operation Giant Slalom, a sprawling, violent drug ring with a body count. The indictment ties him to the execution-style killings of Jagtar and Harbhajan Sidhu, a married couple in their 50s, gunned down in November 2023. Then came the killing of Mohammed Zafar in May of 2024, followed by an attempted murder just 1 month earlier. And that's not all. Ryan's close associate, Andrew Clark, was also charged with murdering Randy Fader in April 2024, a killing prosecutors allege happened under Ryan's direct orders. But his ambition went far beyond the Canadian and U.S. borders. Investigators say that after the murders, Ryan fled to Mexico, not to disappear, but to rise even higher in the underworld. Down there, he allegedly secured his place as a high-ranking figure within the Sinaloa Cartel, one of the most dangerous and powerful drug syndicates in the world. In that world, he's known by names like El Jefe, Giant, or simply Public Enemy. He is considered heavily armed, extremely dangerous, and deeply connected. His inner circle wasn't untouchable, though. In October 2024, his second-in-command was arrested. Ryan, however, slipped through the net. Since then, he's gone completely dark. On March 6, 2025, Ryan officially replaced Alexis Flores on the FBI's 10 Most Wanted list, and the bounty placed on him is staggering, $10 million. That's one of the highest rewards the FBI has ever offered, and it sends a very clear message. They want him badly, and they want him now. Even his personal life reads like a subplot in a crime drama. In 2011, while still serving time in prison, Ryan got married to a woman from British Columbia. The relationship didn't last. They separated, and she has since remarried. Ryan, meanwhile, only sank deeper into the criminal underworld. And now, Hollywood is circling. His life story is being turned into a documentary series titled Snow King, From Olympian to Narco, produced by Rolling Stone Films, Dog Wolf, Visitor Media, and Corriente del Golfo, the production company co-founded by acclaimed actors Gael Garcia Bernal and Diego Luna. The series promises to pull back the curtain on how a Canadian athlete's pursuit of Olympic glory morphed into a violent empire of drugs, guns, and murder. The FBI calls him dangerous. The underworld calls him powerful. And somewhere right now, Ryan James' wedding is out there, whether in a cartel stronghold or blending into a foreign city, living proof that sometimes the most dangerous criminals don't come from the streets. They come from the podium. Yulan Adonai Archaga Karias. Next up is a man the FBI calls one of the most dangerous fugitives on the planet, Yulan Adonai Archaga Karias, better known by the deceptively harmless nickname Porky. His story reads like a high-octane action thriller, except every bullet, every body, and every escape is chillingly real. Standing only about 5'5" and weighing around 160 pounds, Porky is proof that size doesn't define power. What he lacks in height, he more than makes up for in reach, influence, and pure brutality. He is the alleged top leader of MS-13 in Honduras, the feared transnational gang known for its ruthless murders, large-scale drug trafficking, and global network of terror. And unlike the street-level enforcers who carry out the bloodshed, Porky operates like a strategist, a kingpin directing an empire that spans multiple countries.
$5 million. Tonight, that's the reward being offered for the leader of MS-13 in Honduras.
Yeah, a man who has gone through several different looks and has gone by several different names. The FBI says he should be considered armed and extremely dangerous.
To understand just how dangerous he is, you need to understand what MS-13 has become. Born in the 1980s on the streets of Los Angeles to protect Central American immigrants from other gangs, MS-13 has since evolved into a multinational criminal powerhouse. Its influence now stretches across El Salvador, Guatemala, Honduras, Mexico, the United States, Canada, and even into parts of Europe like Spain. They are responsible for an endless list of horrors, murders so violent they shock hardened investigators, human trafficking rings, extortion rackets, and the constant flow of drugs across borders. And at the center of it all in Honduras, Porky. U.S. authorities say he has overseen the gang's cocaine smuggling operations into the United States, bankrolled weapons deals, and directed targeted assassinations against rivals and anyone who dared to cross him. He doesn't just lead from the shadows, he builds alliances, moves tons of narcotics, and keeps the gang's operations well-financed and well-armed. But if there's one event that perfectly captures his audacity, it's his cinematic prison escape in February of 2020. Arrested on charges including the assassination of 2 prosecutors, Porky was being escorted to court in the city of El Progreso. That's when more than 20 armed men dressed in military uniforms stormed the building. They opened fire with assault rifles, killing 3 police officers, injuring others, and creating pure chaos. In the middle of the gunfight, Porky walked out, a free man once again, shielded by gunmen who were willing to kill for him. It wasn't just an escape, it was a declaration. He had humiliated Honduran authorities, proved the depth of his connections, and cemented his status as a fugitive who could not be contained by walls or bars. The United States took notice. In November 2021, Porky was added to the FBI's 10 Most Wanted list, and in April of 2025, the U.S. Secretary of State and Treasury jointly announced a staggering $5 million reward for information leading to his arrest. This isn't your average bounty. It's the kind of figure reserved for cartel bosses and terrorist leaders. And make no mistake, that's exactly how the FBI categorizes him, as a foreign terrorist whose reign of terror must end. Despite this global manhunt, Porky remains at large. Authorities believe he's still somewhere inside Honduras, shielded by layers of loyal operatives and corrupt allies. His communications are encrypted and routed through devices in places as far away as Israel and Poland, sophisticated methods designed to throw off tracking and surveillance. The $5 million reward isn't just about catching one man. It's about sending a message to the criminal underworld that no matter how many soldiers you command, no matter how many borders you hide behind, there's always someone hunting you. And right now, that someone is the FBI. Now here's a name that might not ring a bell for the average person: Giovanni Vicente Mosquera Serrano. But don't mistake unfamiliarity for insignificance. As of 2025, he made history by becoming the first ever member of the notorious Tren de Aragua gang to land on the FBI's 10 Most Wanted list. That fact alone should send a chill straight down your spine. Because this isn't just about one fugitive, it's about the meteoric rise of one of the most violent and fast-growing criminal organizations in the entire Western Hemisphere. Known by the nickname El Viejo, Giovanni isn't some low-level enforcer or mid-tier operative. He's believed to be a senior leader, a key decision-maker in Tren de Aragua, a Venezuelan-born gang that has mutated into a sprawling transnational criminal empire. What started inside Venezuelan prison walls has spilled far beyond, establishing roots and dominion in Colombia, Brazil, Peru, Chile, Mexico, the United States, and beyond. Their business model is as ugly as it gets: drug trafficking, human smuggling, extortion, kidnapping, murder, and an overarching climate of terror. Wherever they go, fear follows. And at the top of one of the gang's deadliest branches stands El Viejo, a man whose reputation is built not just on violence, but on the precision with which he deploys it. To his followers, he's a leader. To his rivals, he's a death sentence waiting to be carried out. The FBI isn't treating him like just another gangster. Giovanni is charged with conspiracy to distribute massive quantities of cocaine, shipments moving through Colombia into the United States, fueling cartel wars and poisoning communities. But that's only part of the picture. He's also accused of providing material support to a terrorist organization. That charge shifts the narrative. Giovanni isn't just a criminal. He's being painted as a transnational terror threat. And here's why that matters. Labeling Tren de Aragua as a terrorist group means the U.S. sees them in the same light as global insurgencies and militant networks. When Giovanni's name replaced another long-hunted fugitive on the FBI's 10 most wanted list, it wasn't just a reshuffling. It was a clear signal that bringing him down is now a top priority. Authorities believe his fingerprints are on multiple murders, including the execution-style killings of rival gang members and the slaughter of innocent bystanders who happened to be in the wrong place at the wrong time. Each move of his organization leaves a trail of blood and intimidation that stretches across countries. And with El Viejo calling the shots, that trail only seemed to grow darker and longer. Now for the part that should worry everyone. He's still out there. Investigators think he may be holed up in Honduras or Venezuela, living under false identities, protected by layers of armed bodyguards and fortified by communities too terrified to turn him in. His communications, routed through encrypted lines linked to countries far away from his hiding place, making his capture a logistical nightmare for even the most seasoned agents. The FBI describes him as armed and extremely dangerous, a man who commands loyalty through absolute fear and who won't hesitate to eliminate anyone who threatens him. And then there's the reward, $3 million. That's the kind of figure usually reserved for the most dangerous cartel leaders in the world. It's not just a bounty, it's a statement. The U.S. government doesn't just want him caught. They want his criminal network dismantled, his influence destroyed, and the message sent that even leaders of fast-rising criminal empires can be brought down. Alejandro Rosales Castillo. You might think a 17-year-old couldn't possibly be a cold-blooded killer. That kind of label is reserved for hardened criminals and seasoned gang members. But think again. At just 17, Alejandro became one of the youngest people ever to make the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list. On the surface, he was an ordinary teenager from Arizona, soft-spoken, baby-faced, and unassuming. But beneath that innocent exterior was a darkness few saw coming, one that would end in a brutal murder and a desperate flight across borders. It began in 2016 in Charlotte, North Carolina. Alejandro was working at a local Showmars restaurant when he met 23-year-old Cryptoqueen Sandy Lai. Sandy was the kind of person who left a mark on everyone she met, hard-working, ambitious, and with a kindness that made her easy to trust. The two dated briefly, but the relationship didn't last. Still, when Alejandro needed money, Sandy lent it to him, likely believing he'd do the right thing and pay her back. That decision would cost her everything. One night, Alejandro contacted Sandy with what seemed like good news. He told her he wanted to repay his debt and asked her to meet him at a Quick Trip gas station on Eastway Drive. Sandy agreed without hesitation. After all, why would she suspect danger from someone she had once cared for? But Alejandro wasn't coming alone. His new girlfriend, Amia Feaster, picked him up in a red Dodge Caliber and drove him straight to the meeting spot. What happened next was the start of a calculated betrayal. Instead of paying Sandy back, Alejandro allegedly forced her to withdraw $1,000 from her bank account. Her uncle later confirmed she had emptied the account that night. From there, things took an even darker turn. Alejandro drove Sandy to a secluded wooded area in Cabarrus County. The sun had set, the trees casting long shadows. No one could hear what was about to happen. In that isolated silence, Alejandro raised a gun and shot Sandy once in the head, He left her body in a ravine as if she were nothing more than an inconvenience to be discarded. The two then fled the scene in Sandy's black 2003 Toyota Corolla, heading west. Their journey ended in Phoenix, Arizona, where they abandoned the car near a bus shelter. Authorities found it on August 15th, but by then, Alejandro was already gone. Surveillance footage confirmed the worst. He had crossed the border into Mexico. By November, investigators charged him with first-degree murder. Soon after, he was also charged with unlawful flight to avoid prosecution. Amia, meanwhile, turned herself in to Mexican authorities on October 20th, just weeks after the killing. She was extradited to the United States, charged as an accessory to murder and with vehicle theft. Incredibly, she posted bond in January 2017 and was released. According to Amia, she and Alejandro had been hiding out with his cousins in Mexico, but Alejandro didn't stick around. Not long after, he vanished again, leaving her behind just as coldly as he had left Sandy in that ravine. Since then, he's been a ghost. His face has appeared on wanted posters, news broadcasts, and even episodes of America's Most Wanted, most recently in February 2024. Despite the coverage, the tips, and the constant media attention, Alejandro Rosales Castillo remains a fugitive. The FBI is offering a reward of up to $250,000 for any information leading to his arrest. Somewhere out there, a man who committed murder at 17 is still walking free, and unless someone comes forward, he'll keep living in the shadows, just one step ahead of the law. Bhadresh Kumar Chetanbhai Patel. Now let's talk about a man whose face might not look threatening at first glance, but behind. At first glance, he doesn't look like someone who could commit one of the most cold-blooded murders in recent memory. His face is calm, his expression almost ordinary, but that's the danger of appearances. Sometimes the most unassuming person is hiding the darkest secrets. Patel has been on the run for nearly a decade after brutally killing his own wife in a place no one could have imagined, in the back room of a Dunkin Donuts. It was a calm Sunday evening, April 12th, 2015, in Hanover, Maryland. The store was quiet, the smell of coffee and baked goods lingering in the air. Patel and his wife, Palak, were working their shift together. At around 9:30 that night, store surveillance captured the two walking into the back room. Nothing seemed unusual, just a married couple finishing a long day. But then, only one of them came back out. Patel returned alone, moving with unsettling composure as if nothing had happened. Maryland, and somehow slipped into New Jersey, where he checked into a hotel. Surveillance shows him leaving the next morning in a cab, heading for Newark Penn Station. From there, the trail goes cold. Did he board a train? Did someone help him disappear? Or did he catch a... Customers waiting at the counter started glancing around, wondering why no one was there to take their orders. Minutes ticked by. Finally, someone called the police. When officers arrived, they headed into the back, and what they found was nothing short of horrifying. Palak lay on the floor, her life brutally taken. The weapon? A blunt object. There was no sign of forced entry, no robbery, no stranger slipping in unnoticed. This was no random act. It was intimate, deliberate, and personal. The shock rippled through the community. Friends and co-workers spoke of Palak's kindness, how she was gentle, hard-working, and had a warm smile for everyone. So why would her own husband do this? Investigators soon uncovered the answer, growing tension at home. Both Patel and Palak were in the United States on expired visas. Palak wanted to return to India to start over. Patel refused. He was determined to stay in America, no matter what it cost, and that difference in vision for their future became a constant source of conflict. Authorities believe that on that quiet April night, in the cramped back room of the store, the argument boiled over. In a violent flash of rage, Patel ended his wife's life. After the murder, he fled Maryland and somehow slipped into New Jersey, where he checked into a hotel. Surveillance shows him leaving the next morning in a cab, heading for Newark Penn Station. From there, the trail goes cold. Did he board a train? Did someone help him disappear? Or did he catch a bus and vanish into another city entirely? Nearly 10 years later, those questions still have no answers. Theories swirl. Some investigators think he returned to India, shielded by family and using the tight-knit community there to avoid capture. Others believe he may be living under a false identity in another country, blending into everyday life the same way he blended into the Dunkin Donuts that night, without drawing suspicion. The FBI isn't giving up. They've placed Patel on the 10 most wanted fugitives list and are offering a $250,000 reward for information leading to his capture. His case remains active, his file still open, and agents continue to chase every lead that comes in. Wilver Villegas Palomino. Just like the other cartel bosses and warlords we've covered, Wilver Villegas Palomino didn't need a flashy nickname, viral headlines, or even a public profile to make the world fear him. He wasn't the kind of kingpin who paraded his wealth or sought the spotlight. He was something far more dangerous, quiet, calculating, and methodical. Wilver built his empire not through grandstanding, but through an unbroken chain of blood, drugs, and terror. In the underworld of transnational crime, it's often the silent ones who are the most lethal. Born in Colombia in the late 1970s, Wilver emerged from obscurity to become one of the most feared operatives within the National Liberation Army, better known as the ELN. Originally formed in the 1960s with political and revolutionary ideals, the ELN eventually morphed into something far darker, a heavily armed syndicate that cloaked its brutality in ideology. For Wilver, it was never about politics or revolution. It was about power, profit, and control. He became the backbone of the ELN's vast cocaine trafficking network, orchestrating the transport of staggering quantities of cocaine from deep in the jungles of South America into the United States and beyond. By the early 2000s, Wilver was already at the helm of an operation moving thousands of kilos of cocaine annually. This wasn't petty smuggling. This was multinational drug trafficking at an industrial scale. What set Wilver apart from other traffickers was his unflinching brutality. His power was maintained not just with money, but with fear. Entire communities in Colombia's rural and remote regions lived under the shadow of his control. Villagers who resisted were kidnapped, beaten, or killed. Rivals didn't just lose turf, they disappeared entirely. His network left behind a trail of mass graves and shattered families, and his word within ELN territory carried the weight of life and death. For years, he managed to stay beyond the reach of law enforcement. Protected by an iron ring of loyal ELN fighters, corrupt officials, and trusted informants, Wilver mastered the art of vanishing. He avoided phones and modern communication, moving constantly through Colombia's dense jungles. To the outside world, he became a ghost, one that haunted entire regions without ever being seen. But ghosts can't hide forever. In March 2020, the U.S. Department of State placed a massive bounty on his head, up to $5 million for information leading to his arrest. The charges? Conspiracy to distribute cocaine with the intent to import it into the United States. In reality, those charges barely scratch the surface of the violence, extortion, and killings tied to his name. The FBI placed him on the 10 most wanted fugitives list, branding him as one of the most dangerous criminals alive. Even with a global manhunt underway, Wilver Villegas Palomino remains free. Authorities believe he's still somewhere deep in Colombia, shielded by jungle terrain, constantly moving between hidden camps, and guarded by heavily armed loyalists who either owe him their lives or fear losing them if they betray him. Like the most dangerous kingpins before him, Wilver's strongest weapons have always been loyalty, terror, and secrecy. And for nearly a decade, those weapons have worked. Until someone breaks that chain, he will remain what he has always been, untouchable. Fausto Isidro Meza Flores. Next up is a name that sends a shiver through the dusty streets of Sinaloa and blares across the radar screens of international law enforcement. Fausto Isidro Meza Flores, better known as El Chapo Isidro. He's not just another cartel figure. He's a blood-soaked legend, a criminal strategist, and a man whose name has been written in the history books of Mexico's drug war. Today, he holds one of the top spots on the FBI's 10 most wanted fugitives list. And once you hear what he's done, you'll understand exactly why. Born on June 19, 1982, in Navojoa, Sonora, Mexico, Meza Flores was never destined for a quiet life. By his teenage years, he had already stepped into the violent, unforgiving world of drug trafficking. He may only stand at 5 feet 6 inches tall and weigh around 160 pounds, but don't be fooled by the numbers. His command has been strong enough to mobilize armies of cartel gunmen and bring entire towns to a standstill under the weight of fear. On February 4, 2025, he officially became the 533rd person ever added to the FBI's 10 most wanted list, replacing Donald Eugene Fields II, a convicted child sex trafficker. His career began under the banner of the Juarez Cartel, working under the infamous Amado Carrillo Fuentes, the Lord of the Skies. But when Amado died during a botched plastic surgery in 1997, the young Meza Flores made a decisive move. He jumped ship to the Beltran Leyva cartel, a decision that would define the rest of his criminal life. There, he climbed the ranks with ruthless efficiency, gaining a reputation not just as a killer, but as a tactician, someone who could orchestrate violence with chilling precision. That reputation was cemented after December 2009, when cartel boss Arturo Beltran Leyva was killed by the Mexican military. Many in the organization scattered, some surrendered, others crossed over to rival cartels. Not Meza Flores. He stayed, and with fewer rivals in his way, he rose even higher. One of his most infamous moments came on July 1, 2010, in the border town of Tubutama, Sonora. It was here that his forces clashed with the Sinaloa cartel and their paramilitary arm, Gente Nueva. Meza Flores, with backing from Los Zetas and his own fearsome group, Los Mazatlecos, turned the rural roads into a war zone. The shootout left about 30 people dead, with 11 vehicles riddled with bullets, some spray-painted with X's to mark cartel allegiance and prevent friendly fire. It wasn't just a battle. It was a statement to rivals, allies, and the government alike. El Chapo Isidro was not afraid of a fight. From the early 2000s onward, Meza Flores' network has been responsible for smuggling staggering quantities of heroin, methamphetamine, cocaine, and marijuana through key trafficking routes, stretching from Mazatlan, Guamuchil, and Xua, all the way to tourist hubs like Los Cabos. Even after the Beltran Leyva brothers fell, he became the right-hand man to Hector Beltran Leyva and maintained control over entire territories, ensuring the cartel's operations never stopped. The government has tried to take him down more than once. On April 28, 2010, the Mexican military launched an operation in Xua to capture him. The attempt failed, though it left 2 soldiers and 12 cartel gunmen dead, including his close ally Omar Alfonso Rubio, known as El Chonte. Later, in December 2013, another hit came when his lieutenant Ignacio Nacho Gonzalez was arrested in Guasave. But like a hydra, every time one head was cut off, Meza Flores found a way to grow stronger. The United States government has charged him with major drug trafficking and weapons violations. He's considered armed, extremely dangerous, and deeply embedded in Mexico's organized crime network. The U.S. Department of State's Narcotics Rewards Program has placed up to $5 million on his head, one of the largest rewards for a fugitive currently on the run. But his influence isn't just measured in firepower, it's also in finances. On January 17, 2013, the U.S. Treasury's Office of Foreign Assets Control invoked the Kingpin Act, freezing the assets of Meza Flores, 7 of his family members, and 3 businesses tied to laundering his drug profits. Still, even with his money trail exposed, his name broadcast across most wanted lists, and a price on his head, he has evaded capture. His last confirmed sighting came in January 2013, when he was spotted attending a youth basketball game in San Pedro Garza, Nuevo León. The fact that someone so high profile could appear in public, surrounded by civilians, and then melt back into hiding without a trace speaks volumes about the protection and power he still commands. Today, Fausto Isidro Meza Flores remains a phantom in the Mexican underworld, a cartel mastermind whose empire continues to operate from the shadows. As long as he's free, his name will remain a chilling reminder that in the world of organized crime, sometimes the most dangerous enemies aren't the ones making headlines. They're the ones you can't catch. From cartel kingpins to crypto fraudsters, gang leaders to grieving families, these 10 fugitives represent some of the most dangerous and destructive people on the planet. As viewers, it's easy to feel distant from these stories, but each fugitive underscores a vital truth. Criminals hide in plain sight, in your neighborhood, online, even behind a familiar smile. So, here's the question for you. Which of these fugitives do you think is most likely to be captured next, and why? Share your thoughts in the comments below. If you've made it this far, be sure to check out this next video. I think you'll enjoy it. Thank you once again for watching.